Good morning, everybody. I'll declare the meeting open at 9:31 and acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on traditional land of the Whadjuk people, the nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia. We pay respects to elders past and present and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP standing orders under the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. I'm Clayton Hyam, the presiding member for today's meeting. I have on the panel with me Jean Coltaz, the deputy presiding member, Nima Premji online there, and for this part of the meeting, Councillor Barry Winmar and Councillor Matthew Rose. And later on for the Wanneroo matter, we'll have Councillor Smith and Councillor Jackie Huntley. Apologies, have an apology from Karen Hyde, the specialist member. There are no members on leave of absence and minutes of previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Declarations of due consideration. Can panel members all confirm that they've duly considered all the material for you today? A show of hands. Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillors, did this matter go to a council meeting?
Not to the City of Kwinana.
Thank you. Excellent. Move on then. Going on to the item itself, there is a presenter, Daniel Lewis, online. Daniel? 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. I'll be brief. This, from our perspective, is merely procedural. Unfortunately, we landed in the Christmas period and that we haven't had sufficient time in order to come back to the panel with sufficient information, also to the planning team. As presented in our written submission, in November, we met on site, or we met with the planning team, then we met on site briefly afterwards. And since then, we've been working with our consultant team in order to pull together the documentation, and hence why we're in support of the City of Kwinana's recommendation for a deferral for a period of 60 days in order for this to come back to the panel in due course. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there questions of Daniel from panel members? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move to the officers. If they have any comments to make or just take questions.
We don't have any comments.
Oh, you don't? Okay, happy to take questions. Are there any questions of the officers from panel members?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. That's nice and simple. We'll move to the item. There is a recommendation for deferral and the reasons given there. I'm seeking a mover and a seconder for the published recommendation to defer. Is there a mover for that?
Yes, I can move that.
Yes, Councillor Rose, seconded Councillor Winmar. Thank you very much. Councillor Rose, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Yeah, happy to defer this item. Understandable the time constraints over the Christmas period. It's nice to see and hear that the applicants are working with the City of Kwinana, and I'm, as per my statements at the previous meeting, I do want to get all the correct information to the city for us to consider in due course. So happy to defer this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Winmar, a seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. I agree with Councillor Roust, ensuring that we've got all the information on hand, as was highlighted in the previous meeting around the issues that were arisen. and happy to second the deferral so that we ensure that we're better informed to be able to make a informed decision at a future deferment. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers?
Yes, presiding member, just support the comments made by the councillors and support the deferral.
Thank you. Yes, Nima.
Yes, again, I concur with all the comments and support the deferment.
Yes, I'm happy to support that too. So, councillor Rouse, to wind up the debate.
Yeah, nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors, for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No forms 2 and no section 31 in that part of the meeting. Moving on now to the Wanneroo item. And welcome councillors Smith and Huntley to the panel. Councillor. Thank you. Can I get a declaration of due consideration from members, please, for this part of the meeting? Thank you very much. And disclosures of interest. I have one listed there from Karen Hyde. It's an indirect pecuniary interest. Her husband is a shareholder and director of EPCAD, the firm that prepared the landscape plan associated with this development application. So she is not sitting on the panel today. Are there any declarations of interest? Did this matter go to council meeting, councillors? No. Okay, thank you. All right. No disclosure of interest. I'll move on. We have some presentations. Reminding the presenters 3 minutes. So the two of you, that will be a 6-minute maximum. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Good morning, presiding members. My name is Damien Maloney. I'm a director of Eglinton Estates Proprietary Limited. Thank you for the opportunity to make this deputation on the development application on the Eglinton Village Neighbourhood Centre. Eglinton Estates owns a number of large and global land holdings in Eglinton, including the Eglinton District Centre, which is just 500 metres north of the site we're talking about today. Eglinton Estates submits the proposal before you today should not be approved for the reasons outlined in our submissions and the submissions lodged by Eglinton Estates legal representative, Belinda Morich. The approved Eglinton District Centre Activity Centre Plan was approved to provide 2 full-line supermarkets within the Eglinton District Centre. That is a Coles and Woolworths supermarket, together with a smaller format supermarket such as an Aldi or an IGA. The Eglinton Village Neighbourhood Centre, under the Eglinton Agreed Structure Plan number 82, is approved to provide a smaller format supermarket, for example, an Aldi or an IGA, or a limited line Coles or Woolworths supermarket. If the proposed development before the panel is approved, one of the full-line supermarkets will be removed from the Eglinton District Centre to the Eglinton Village Neighbourhood Centre. Such a move will have a significant detrimental impact on the approved activity centre hierarchy in this area and undermines a significant level of public investment in transport infrastructure that has already been invested in the Eglinton District Station, Eglinton District Centre, namely the Eglinton Station. Investment decisions are based upon and rely on the approved planning hierarchy. With the greatest respect, this panel must ensure the planning hierarchy is protected. Eglinton Estates accepts LDP 24 increases the net lettable area of the Eglinton Village Neighbourhood Centre from the originally approved 2051 square metres to 3,250 square metres. We contend that the definition of NLA to be applied by this panel must include back of house areas for the supermarket and specialty shops. Applying the definition correctly will limit development to a retail facility that is in keeping with the approved planning hierarchy. Eglinton Estates submits that this panel should not approve this application for 5,055 square metres NLA which is grossly in excess of the 3,250 square metres NLA permitted by LDP 24. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member and members of the Development Assessment Panel. My name is Belinda Morich. I'm a planning and environment lawyer and I act for Eglinton Estates Proprietary Limited. The panel will have received a copy of my written deputation, and I don't intend to read from that verbatim. The crux of the matter here is a misconstruction of the definitions of retail NLA and NLA in the DPS or LPS 2 of the so the City of Wanneroo's planning scheme, and the definition of NLA in the deemed provisions. And you can see that misconstruction writ large on page 14 of the RAR, where it says the key difference between the two terms, NLA and retail NLA, is that retail NLA is not inclusive of back-of-house storage areas and other areas not used for retail trade. Application of the term net lettable area in lieu of retail net lettable area would result in a reduced amount of area dedicated to retail trade. That is an artificiality and a concoction. There is no different definition of NLA as it relates to retail land uses in either the planning scheme or in the deemed provisions. The way this construction has occurred is that the definition of retail NLA in the scheme talks about net lettable area for any of the purposes in Pluck 5 land use category under the WA land use standard land use classification. But the reason for that definition is to differentiate retail NLA from other categories of under those codes. And as you would both know from your long experience, that includes other types of land use categories like office and warehouse that are categorised under different category numbers. So the purpose of retail NLA is to ensure that to the extent that there's a constraint on the amount of development allowed, it relates only to the retail land uses within a centre and not to anything else. There is nothing in any of those documents which makes reference to trading floor space, back of house, or any of those, or any of that language. The way that this needs to be constructed and interpreted is that retail NLA needs to be read with the definition of NLA in the deemed provisions. And that is very clear that there are only limited amounts of service areas and back of house type land use activities which can be excluded from the NLA. And on that basis, we say that this development is significantly larger than what is proposed under the LDP. By way of calculation, about 36% of the land has been, of all of the floor area has been removed in order to make out the 3,250 odd square metres that the LDP allows. When one looks at this, at the site plans, it's clear that there are a number of areas that have been excluded which are not consistent with the definition of NLA in the deemed provisions. And to the extent that that occurs, a condition of development approval, and there is one in here that is proposed for you to, if you so chose to approve this application, and that's condition 22. That condition says that the development is approved to incorporate a maximum retail NLA of 3,250 square metres. Now, if the correct interpretation of the definition is applied, then the outcome is a very differently designed centre than the one that is before you today. So we say that it isn't enough to impose a condition of that nature in order to satisfy the requirements of the LDP and the planning framework. We respectfully say that the only way that this can be appropriately managed is by refusing the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the presenters?
Yes, I have one. Mr. Maloney, you said that the Eglinton District Centre has been approved, allowing for 2 full format supermarkets. Can you guide me to a provision where that says that? Or?
Yes, it goes to the approved activity centre plan, which has a cap of 20,000 square metres retail floor space within the Eglinton District Centre. And when you look at the approved ACP, that is made up of 2 full-line supermarkets and then the minor supermarkets, along with specialty stores, over the 2 or 3 sites that have been allocated to it. The subdivisional approval has been granted. That's the conditional approval is in place, configuring the land in accordance with the approved ACP. So it was very clear that the ACP that has been approved has been given full district centre status, with the Eglinton Village Neighbourhood Centre being, as it's described, a neighbourhood centre with a cap of retail floor space that does not erode the authority and the layout and the approved Eglinton District Structure Plan, Eglinton District Centre Activity Centre Plan.
And the activity centre plan, if I may, does that specifically state floor areas for the supermarkets?
Yes, it does. Yes, there's a table in the ACP which gives a breakdown of not only the retail floor space, but the bulky goods, the office, the other uses that make up the approved ACP. So it's the status of the activity centre plan, the district structure plan, that is at stake here, with the erosion of the district structure plan being arrived at by the approval of other sites. And there are a number of neighbourhood centre sites in both Eglinton and the adjoining Alkimos that could erode the authority, the whole retail hierarchy that has been approved by the City of Wanneroo and the WAPC.
Can I just add one thing? That if the same interpretation was applied to the Eglinton District Centre, we'd be looking at retail NLA of over 36,000 square metres around that. Because if you're taking the same calculation, which removes, over a third of all the floor space out for the purpose of this calculation, we also get over a third. And ours, and we're looking at something that's starting to look like a regional centre when it's been defined as a district centre.
Is this use of the definition fairly new, or it's not? Well, has it happened before?
So that definition of retail NLA has been in the City of Wanneroo's planning scheme for many years, and that definition talks about NLA in accordance with the WASLAC codes. The WASLAC codes list, as you would know, there's pages of different types of land uses that fit under each of the categories. But the definition of NLA in that document is the same. It's almost the same as what's in the deemed provisions, but substantively identical. So there hasn't been any change. What appears to have happened is that there's this praxis report that preceded the preparation of the LDP, which seemed to make their own interpretation of what is in and what is out. And it's that document which identified that this concept of trading floor space was what was to be taken into account. But there's nothing legally in any of the documents which make any reference to that at all. And the DAP is required to use the definition of NLA as it currently appears in the deemed provisions. And to the extent that there was ever any question about that, the decision of McComish, which was handed down just before Christmas, makes it clear that that is a document that sits at the top of the priority in terms of definitions.
If the job is to apply the scheme,
Yes.
my understanding is the scheme doesn't place a cap on floor space.
The scheme itself doesn't place a cap on floor space, no.
Okay, further questions?
No, not at this stage.
Questions? No. Thank you very much. And what's
Morning, members. Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm a director from Irvis, representing Babcock today. We appreciate the opportunity to present and are pleased to note the City's recommendation for conditional approval for the development. Joining me today, obviously, Craig Wallace from Lavin here presenting after me. We've got PTG traffic engineers online and Babcock Haim Charlie here with me today to answer any technical queries you may have after our presentations. I guess firstly, I'd like to just say that we have reviewed all conditions and we are happy with all. I'll point out a couple. Condition 4 requires a couple of different minor design modifications, so requiring additional pedestrian pathways and access for a service vehicle to the corresponding track. We've had some discussions with the city over the past couple of weeks and we're very close to a resolution on that together with Cedar Woods. Similarly, condition 23 requiring removal of the left-in, left-out access, the southernmost one. We are happy to agree to that. The development operates satisfactorily without that, and we can revisit that in the future as part of the pad sites. So I now wish to address the shop retail floor space matter, acknowledging the deputations before me. And as you know, the site's been earmarked for a neighbourhood centre for many years, and that's stipulated most recently in LDP 24. As panel members would be aware, the LDP, and as foreshadowed in the deputations before me, that was amended to increase retail NLA from 2051 to 3250. That was undertaken by Cedar Woods in 2023. That was accompanied by a retail impact test, which confirmed the additional floor space would have no detrimental impact on any of the centres in the surrounding hierarchy, including the Eglinton District Centre, and it was subsequently approved by the city. Babcock purchased the site from Cedar Woods on the basis of that retail maximum, so they're fully aware of that. So the lodged application before you today, which includes a supermarket, 3 specialty tenancies, proposes a shop retail floor space of 3242 NLA, and it is fully compliant. I note the deputations before me questioned our interpretation of and calculation of retail NLA. I can categorically confirm that notwithstanding the city's separate retail NLA definition, our methodology to calculate NLA is consistent with the deed provisions, and that's how we approach every single, both Woolworths and every other Woolworths retail development. So noting Eglinton Estates' point around the deed provisions not specifically referencing back of house, we can test this. It is important to highlight that the deemed provisions definition does include several exclusions from the NLA calculation. I can name some, so tea rooms, plant rooms, service areas, and we're very experienced in applying that definition. Based on our project team's significant experience calculating NLA for a range of retail developments, excluding back-of-house service areas from this calculation is a common and accepted way of calculating NLA consistent with the deemed provisions definition. We also note the city has reviewed our calculations, our plans in absolute detail, and they're fully supportive of this. Condition 22 further requires Babcock to comply with this through the detailed design building permit process, so we're bound by that. To conclude, there is absolutely no barrier to this development being approved today. While the deputations before me have raised concerns, these are matters which were raised and dealt with in detail through consideration of the LDP and should not be up for debate again. The fundamental context is that the LDP is a shop retail maximum. We have lodged a development application which accords to that maximum, and we utilise the correct NLA definition. And the city has supported this. So that's the crux of this. We would also like to remind the panel that in making a decision, clause 67 of the deemed provisions excludes economic competition from being a valid planning consideration. There's been considerable retail analysis done to inform that shop retail floor space, and that confirms that this would not have a detrimental impact on the district centre or other centres. So with that, I would like to thank the city for their work throughout this entire process. It's been very positive. I hope I clarified some of the matters raised. Obviously, Mr. Wallace will now present, and then as a team, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Craig Wallace at Lavin, on behalf of Babcock. I'm here just to ensure that law isn't an ass, because there is a danger of the words of the page creating some confusion. The McComish decision is quite clear. There's a it's undisputable that section 257B of the Planning and Development Act says that if there is an inconsistency between the deemed provision and the local planning scheme, the deemed provision will prevail. There's no doubt about that. The question in my mind is whether or not there's actually an inconsistency in this context, because clearly the definition in the deemed provisions does not appear to be inconsistent with the definition in the scheme. The issue is in relation to how the calculation of retail floor space is dealt with in the local development plan. So when we think about it that way, is the provision in section 257B actually triggered? I would suggest not. But even if it was, where does that leave the JDAP? The JDAP is well understands its discretion in relation to these types of matters. You quite clearly articulated there's no cap. So in the scheme. So what you're dealing with is the matters of due regard in clause 67, including the structure plan and including the local development plan. The issue in the context of the inconsistency arises by pure dint of how things were described during our planning journey in relation to net lettable areas, in relation to retail floor space, etc., etc. How you calculate it may be a matter for others more intelligent than I, but it's certainly something that can create some confusion. All that the RAR does, in my view, is try to create a situation where you're comparing apples and apples and not apples and pears, and that they do that quite appropriately at page 14 and come to their conclusion on page 15 of the RAR. Relevantly, when you're looking at the line of discretion from the scheme through the ASP into the LDP, the ASP in particular at paragraph 5.3 sets out a retail floor space provision referring to a maximum net lettable area at subpoint A. At B, it says that that table 1 may be exceeded through a local development plan for the entire centre where the requirements of state planning policy 4.2 activity centres for Perth and Peel are met to the satisfaction of the WAPC in the city of Wanneroo. It doesn't say how. And in relation to the LDP, all the LDP does is effectively make an annotation in relation to how it interpreted the data that was in front of it and applied a number that it said wouldn't impact on other centres in the retail hierarchy. For the purposes of your discretion, this isn't something. This inconsistency isn't something that makes your decision unlawful. It's not something that takes away from your ability to make a decision. And as Megan said, this is something that's well understood by both the city and they've dealt with it in their RAR, well understood by the applicant and its consultants, and something that we're happy to abide by in terms of the condition, and in particular, condition 22.
Thank you very much. Questions of the presenter? Can you describe for me, on the plan there's the pink area, which is the supermarket, then there's the lighter pink, which is that, I think, the back of house. You mentioned some of the things in there. What's in there that would be disputed?
Back of house area, So within there, and Dundee and Mason, staff areas, back of house preparation, food preparation areas, plant rooms, other service areas. So
does that include, for instance, if I'm in Woolworths at the counter there where they've got all the deli stuff, does that include that and the area behind where there's preparation of?
Like within the deli area or something like that, that would be excluded.
Yeah, I believe currently the way Woolworths has measured their internal store template, that area behind the servery is included as the back of house. That's how they've done it.
That's consistent with the way we obviously, as you'd be aware, face NLA maximums in a lot of the centres that we deal with for Woolworths, and we would always exclude those areas. But to your point, yes, excluded.
And to haven't measured exactly, but it's 50 or so square meters. It's not significant in the scheme of things. It may be 100, but it's 50 to 100-ish of, or less than 100, but it's just that area between the servery and the back wall of the back of the storage area in that zone.
Yeah, okay. The previous presenters suggested that proposed condition 22 is going to cause you a need to considerably redesign the space? Is that only because of the difference in definition?
I guess the difference in interpretation, because we wrote that condition and from our perspective, we fully comply with that. So we know that there's a shop retail floor space maximum. What we've lodged is consistent with that, and what we'll need to take through a detailed design, which will show the more detailed layout of the Woolworths and other tenancies, we'll have to adhere to that. So we have no issue.
Questions of the presenters? Councillor Smith. Sorry.
Thank you. My question is not to do with area. So if anyone does have any questions about area, I'm happy for them to go before me.
No, you please go ahead.
Okay. My question to the presenters is about the comments during the consultation period, where I just noticed a few comments from people referencing the design and mentioning the black cladding on the design and calling it to be a little bit more suitable to the inspired character of the village, as it's a very coastal suburb with lighter colours and things like that. I was wondering if they had any response to that, considering, I guess, one of the conditions later is for all all external finishes must be submitted to approval for the city. Now, I know it's gone to the panel with the city before and there wasn't a problem flagged with it, and the black does look smart, but I just was wanting to hear from them to see if they would be amenable to any colour changes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would have to speak to Fabcop, but at the moment, the black is predominantly a trim on the edge of the canopy line. So I think, yeah, absolutely, that's something which we can look at, but predominantly the building is the lighter tone. So that just, if there's a desire to change that black trim, yeah, I think that would be, yeah, definitely accommodated if required. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Further question, Nima.
Yes, I wanted to discuss about the removal that was proposed of the left-in, left-out access. Since then, have you had the chance to do a traffic assessment within the car parks and the flow of the traffic, and will it be accommodated?
Yes, well, sorry, and is Scott available online? Can you just check for me? But to your point, I guess the secondary access that we showed in our lodge development application was, we noted it was in addition to the local development plan that only showed that single access to the north. And so there was considerable traffic analysis done to support that, which supported the single access point, and that was looked at by Scott as well. So to your answer, yes, the southern was nice to have, but the development operates satisfactorily without it. But perhaps I'll refer to Scott to embellish on that.
Further questions? This is a fairly minor one, but I noticed in the RAR under proposal it says there are approximately 11 bicycle parking bays. I'm not sure how you get approximately 11, but
yeah, well,
we can fit them in.
Yeah, I think yeah, we're at 21 at the moment in our
that's more than approximate.
Yes, yeah.
All right, thank you. Further questions of the presenters? Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll go to the item. There is a recommendation for approval. Oh, sorry, staff. I beg your pardon, Greg. Sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity.
I haven't forgotten you.
No, that's all right. We thought you'd move through and we were just starting to talk. Thank you for the opportunity. The city's happy with the proposal in terms of its retail impact. It's consistent with the local development plan. I appreciate the arguments that Ms. Maloney and Ms. Morich have presented. However, we have been through this a number of times with our structure planning and our development control processes. We apply our assessment consistently. The retail modelling that was done to substantiate increasing the floor space for this centre also indicates that there is additional capacity at the district centre. We've previously supported further increases, although the West Australian Planning Commission has not endorsed that for the district centre at Eglinton train station. So we feel, and our gravity modelling for the whole corridor indicates that there is likely to be a need for additional floor space at the district centre when it's fully developed. So, and we don't see that a neighbourhood centre comprising a single supermarket, a couple of specialties, will compete in any substantial way with a district centre at a transport node. So these are fundamentally serving different purposes under SPT 4.2. So local, daily, weekly, the shopping need versus a comparison and activity centre, which will be constructed at the train station in due course. So we don't feel that there's any cause for alarm. Our modelling indicates that they work perfectly well side by side, and there's likely to be more need for floor space at the district centre in longer term. So, and the methodologies for calculating is the city's view on how we work with back of house. The distinctive difference we feel is consistent somewhat with what Ms. Morich has outlined, which is that you are applying the retail floor space for under plug 5 for their NLA calculation. The back of house facilities are a different plug category. So they are considered a different plug category, not retail plug category. So therefore, the NLA of the building is different to the NLA calculated for, or the retail component and the other plug category components of the building. So in total, building floor space will be a certain amount, and the retail component will be a fraction of that, and the back of house, being a different plug category, is the remainder. So that's how we look at the calculation of these facilities. In addition, you've got facilities in there like direct to boot, which also take up floor space within there. They're not a retail use as such. There's no comparison. There's no retail trade display involved in direct to boot. So that also indicates sort of the warehousing nature of the shift in retail as well in these centres, that there is a component of people just going there to pick up from the car park essentially. So again, we don't feel that there's any reason for concern in terms of the impact on operation of the district centre over time. The details of the proposal have been quite complicated in terms of the subdivision and the structure planning processes, but we feel that we've got a good handle on those through the conditions of development approval. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Greg. Questions of the officers?
Yes, Presiding Member. Greg, the argument about the definition of retail floor space, what's the total that we're looking at? I mean, the neighbourhood centre and the district centre, if the neighbourhood centre went ahead with the definition as proposed by the opponents, what's the total floor space difference between the lodged?
Well, the district centre currently has an allocation of 20,000 square metres. This centre in the LDP has an allocation of 3,250 square metres. So the difference is just in what proportion is of the buildings will be serving a retail function versus a non-plug 5 retail function, because you've got multiple plug categories through industrial and warehousing and the like. It really comes down to that. So a district centre will have offices and things like that are not plug 5 retail. They'll be components of buildings, shopping centres where there may be office buildings and the like that are not plug 5. So it's really very hard to say what proportion would be retail.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, Greg, original intent for the neighbourhood centre, what would you have envisaged, a full line supermarket there, or was it something less than that? Neighbourhood centre.
Yeah, thank you. So probably there's been time between when the ASP was prepared and developments within the SPP 4.2 and how it regards floor space versus the characterisation of a centre as and what level of centre it means. So we really in the system moved away from floor space limitations towards what characterises a neighbourhood centre. In my view, a local supermarket with a couple of specialties and maybe some ancillary services like pharmacy and the like would be a neighbourhood centre, which is what's indicated for the site in the structure plan.
Thank you. Nima.
Yes, just wanted to ask, I know that earlier comments were made in the presentation regarding the access to the GPT. My question to the city officers is that looking at the options, does it have any significant impact on the layout of the site?
We've worked that through, so we're quite happy that there's a couple of options that we can work through within the public open space or access down the side of the building. We've had a discussion with Woolworths and Seafoods last week to sort of work through those options. So we feel we've got a good understanding of the outcomes for that. The main concern for us is just to ensure that we've got the ability to access and service the pipeline through the site for the road drainage network and be able to just get the what is a rather large vehicle, a large 19-metre vehicle in to service the GPT. So we feel we've got a good understanding with the moment.
Thank you. That's all. Thanks.
Greg, what's your response to the comments made earlier about this not supporting the large investment, excuse me, in public transport, the Eglinton Centre or adjacent?
Yeah, we certainly addressed that in considering the LDP and looking at the retail impact. So there is a range of services that should be provided in a neighbourhood centre. And whether or not there is an over time impact on a district centre. At this stage, we have nothing at the district centre. Station's open. We've not seen any sort of proposal yet for the districts and for the activity centre at the station. This is a local shopping centre. It doesn't provide the range of comparison goods or doesn't subvert the role of a district centre being a local neighbourhood centre.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? No. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to the published recommendation for approval with conditions. I'm seeking a mover and seconder for the published recommendation. Is there a mover? Councillor Smith, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Huntley, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Looking to the community, I think there's a lot of people who are welcoming a new supermarket into the area. I do note that some of the concerns about the liquor licence and there being multiple other ones there, but unfortunately that's not something that we can really consider as part of our scope for the DAP. But other things that I noticed is that I love that there's going to be a mural as part of it next to or opposite the public open space. So I think that's great as well to have been included. So yeah, I'm very happy to see this come along, and thank you for the discussion about, I guess, that area, but I am confident in, I think Mr. Baring summed it up well in terms of how I feel about that situation. So happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley.
Yeah, so I'm happy to support, but I did note there were some changes to condition 4. Am I correct in that? Were there changes?
Not that I'm aware of.
So they were happy to approve all of those. Can we just ask just to make sure that they're happy with section?
They're happy. Not that that should.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think this is these neighbourhood centres do need to be considered for the larger supermarkets as well. I think we are trying to encourage people to walk and shop, and to spend a bit more time in them. For these smaller retails that are located around them, it does attract them. I think the districts and the regional centres will be huge in respect of sort of what they serve and who they serve. And with the community, we're looking at 600,000 people. I really don't think we're going to be short of people wanting to shop at these supermarkets. So, and I think people will go to district town centres because they have a choice of supermarkets, whereas here they don't. So, yeah, look, I can see a point that they're trying to make, but I do agree with the city that the rules have been used so many times, and we haven't had this issue come up before. So yeah, happy to approve.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers?
Yes. Look, other than the argument regarding the lettable area, this centre is a well-designed and attractive shopping centre proposal, which exhibits all the traits of a neighbourhood centre. The argument on the definition of floor space has been demonstrated to be by the council to have been applied consistently, and the proponents who've had experience in this field have demonstrated also that they have experience in assessing the intricacies of the lettable area arguments in the scheme and LDP. The fact that this centre is going to have a Woolworths or Coles or whatever it will ultimately have, Woolworths in this case, I'm sure that people are familiar with that a lot of these particular major operators do have smaller, less range of goods than the district centre do have. So I'm swayed by the arguments put forward by the council in the RA that the application of the lettable area is consistent and they've applied it so. In regard to the assessment of the proposal for details such as the design of the development, the proponents have had a number of meetings with the council and the design review panel and modified their plans to come up with a more appropriate design centre. They've covered parking, landscaping, shade trees, access to and from the site, signage. They've had some signage deleted from their proposal. So all in all, the developments is generally compliant with the scheme provisions and the local development plan, and I'm supportive of it.
Thank you. Nima.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Again, I concur with all the comments made prior. It is a very good design, and I commend the developer on taking on board the design review panel's comments, and they did make significant modifications. There's a very good pedestrian connectivity within the public open space, and also they've adhered to the future connectivity requirements which the city has conditioned. So therefore, I support the recommendation in the RA report. Thank you.
Thank you. I too fully support the proposal in design terms. I think it's well resolved. As Nima mentioned, there's very good pedestrian connectivity throughout the site. The issue that exercised my mind over the last few days in reading that RA has always been the application of the definition, the application of the structure plan and the local plan. Having due regard to those, I'm quite happy that the right interpretation has been consistently applied here. So I'm satisfied that that we can approve this with that floor space, and with condition 22, I think that then controls the amount of floor space based on that interpretation for the net lettable area. So I'm happy to support the proposal with the conditions as listed. Back to you, Councillor Smith, to wind up the debate.
Happy with everything said, so happy to continue and support and go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Just to finish off the meeting, there's no forms 2, no section 31s, and some SAT matters listed there. The meeting closed at 10:23. Thank you everyone for your attention.